The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. In the 2nd century BC, the Greek poet Antipater of Sidon for the first time compiled the list of the seven wonders of the ancient world. In this content, we will make an extraordinary journey through time to discover the seven wonders of the ancient world. Let's see the location of the seven wonders of the ancient world on the map, and let's get ready together to discover the features, secrets, and mysteries of the seven wonders of the ancient world. The Statue of Zeus by Phidias. The Statue of Zeus is the first of the seven wonders examined here in this content. It was built by the famous Greek artist and sculptor Phidias, who, after his masterpiece of the chryselephantine Athena for the Parthenon, created this sumptuous and unique work. It's made of wood, gold, and ivory, the same materials that Phidias used for the realization of the statue of Athena of the Parthenon. Phidias made it for the Temple of Zeus in the important Pan-Hellenic center of Olympia, a sacred place for all Greek polis. In order to work better, Phidias had built a laboratory very close to the temple. It had the same height as the cell of the Temple of Zeus, inside which the masterpiece of Phidias will later be placed. It was so huge that even touched the ceiling of the temple with its head. In fact, Strabon wrote, "If God had stood up, he would have uncovered the temple." After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the statue was brought to Constantinople and it was probably destroyed by a fire, so the traces of Phidias' masterpiece were lost forever. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens should be located in Babylon, although recent studies support the fact that they should be in the Assyrian city of Nineveh. However, we cannot yet exclude the most traditional theory, which locates the gardens in Babylon. They were built by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar as a gift for her favorite concubine, who missed the green mountains she could see in her places of origin before she had to move to Babylonian reign. These sumptuous gardens were built upwards thanks to ingenious terraces, which allowed the insertion of luxuriant vegetation. Indeed, we can consider the Hanging Gardens as the most mysterious wonder among the seven, since today almost nothing has left of them. The only remains should be attributable to the findings of the German archaeologist Koldewey, according to whom the gardens were located near the Sacred Way and next to the Ishtar Gate, not far from the southern palace of Babylon, in which also Alexander the Great used to live after the conquest of Babylon. There is, however, the English archaeologist Wiseman's theory, according to which, since the Hanging Gardens of Babylon required a continuous supply of water, they should be located in proximity of the Euphrates River. Therefore, for this reason, we can say that the Hanging Gardens are certainly the most mysterious of the 7 wonders. The Pyramid of Cheops. The Pyramid of Cheops is the only wonder of the ancient world that has survived intact to the present day, and it also is the largest. The pyramid measures 139 meters in height and dates back to 2550 before Christ. The building was intended to house the remains of Pharaoh Cheops, who probably wanted a pyramid for himself as sumptuous as the Saqqara pyramid, which was, however, built in steps. The pharaoh thus celebrated life after death with this mammoth work that still today inspires immeasurable charm in visitors. At the end of the pyramid there was a golden roof that certainly had to give even more charm and splendor to this structure. The Pyramid of Cheops still resists the neglect of time in the Giza Plateau, together with the other pyramids of the pharaohs Khafre and Menkaure, through the pyramids of the relatives of the pharaohs and together with the Sphinx. The Colossus of Rhodes. After the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Colossus of Rhodes is probably the most mysterious wonder, as 67 years after its construction, the statue was destroyed due to an earthquake, and its reconstruction was never put into practice, as this operation was seen by the inhabitants as a bad omen. In fact, the Colossus of Rhodes, after the earthquake, was never rebuilt. Probably the statue was supposed to depict Apollo, and many illustrations from the Renaissance and modern times have handed down a huge colossus placed at the entrance to the port with legs apart, a position that has caused many to debate, as this position is considered unlikely on a structural level, and a colossus like that with this posture could not have easily stood up. However, precisely because of the systematic position used in the various representations, he is depicted here in this position and in all its grandeur. The Colossus represented the god Iliu and was 33 meters high and was made of bronze by Carate di Lindo, a pupil of Lysippus. Recent studies suggest a new position for the Colossus and a different posture, a more internal position towards the heels and a position without legs apart. According to this hypothesis, the Colossus must have had a much more ordinary posture, and in both versions there must have been a 7-pointed crown. A similar crown was made centuries later in France for the Statue of Liberty located in New York. When he learned of its reconstruction, Ptolemy III wanted to offer money for the reconstruction of the Colossus, but the Rhodians refused, in order not to contradict the response of the oracle, who told the inhabitants not to rebuild the Colossus of Rhodes anymore. The Lighthouse of Alexandria. The Lighthouse of Alexandria in Egypt was certainly the most functional wonder, as it had the function of guiding ships at the entrance of the port of Alexandria in Egypt. With its 134 meters high, this structure is considered by many the first skyscraper in history. It was built by Ptolemy I and completed by Ptolemy II in the 3rd century BC. After the Pyramid of Cheops, it is the long-running wonder since it was an earthquake in 1300 to destroy it. After this event, the lighthouse was no longer rebuilt and its remains were missing in the sea. The Greek philosopher and historian Strabo tells, "It carries a tower admirably built with white marble, with many floors and with the same name as the island." Inside the structure there were many people who worked to keep the lighthouse efficient and functional, and recent underwater excavations have made possible to find its remains, which corroborate the description made by Strabo. In fact, according to the Roman historian Flavius Josephus, the lighthouse could have been seen from 48 kilometers away. Near Alexandria in Egypt, there is the Abu Sir lighthouse, which would be a scaled-down copy of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and according to some, the building was also used as the burial place of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus was built in the 4th century BC in Halicarnassus. It was the tomb of the king of Halicarnassus, Mausolus. The mausoleum is a marvel and a masterpiece of Hellenistic art, though very little remains are left, as it was destroyed by a violent earthquake. Among the elements that managed to come to the present day, there are the statues of Mausolus and his wife Artemisia, who were placed on a quadriga which is possible to see here above the building. Alexander the Great would certainly have seen the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, and many important emperors of Roman history did as well. The mausoleum embodies the idea of grandeur in Greek-Roman art, and it also has influenced many great emperors such as Augustus and Hadrian, who wanted a burial place for themselves that recalled the grandeur and beauty of the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, even if the constructions obviously differ in different ways. This building was certainly admired and celebrated from many historians and poets of all times. After its deconstruction, the remains were used for the medieval fortress of Bodrum by the Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, commonly known as the Knights Hospitaller. In the 19th century, the remains were found right in the place indicated by Vitruvius, that is, in the center of the city, placed on a large terracing, not far from the Agora of Halicarnassus. The Greek poet Antipater of Sidon in the 2nd century BC writes about the seven wonders. He said, "I have set my eyes on the great walls of the ancient Babylon, on which a road for chariots remains, and on the statue of Zeus at the Alpheo, and the hanging gardens, and on the Colossus of Rhodes of the sun god, and the great work of the high pyramids, and the great tomb of Mausolus. But when I saw the house of Artemis that surmounts the clouds, all these wonders loses their splendor. And then I said, indeed, never the sun saw such a large size." The Artemision of Ephesus. The Artemision of Ephesus had 127 Ionic columns, and it was almost 18 meters high. It had 8 columns on the short side and 21 on the long side. This is a 3D reconstruction of the Ionic version of the Artemision, which was rebuilt by Alexander the Great, as the previous one had been destroyed in 356 BC. The temple was a truly colossal building with its marble altar, remembered as one of the most beautiful in Greek civilization. The Artemision of Ephesus, in addition to being one of the most colossal temples of antiquity and one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, was a very popular place for pilgrims who visited Ephesus and brought offerings to the goddess from all over the Greek world. Next to the building, there are the stalls where statues and votive vases were sold. In fact, this place was very popular among pilgrims. The cult of Artemis in Ephesus also continued in Roman times up to 262 AD, the year in which the temple was destroyed by the Goths, and consequently the glorious history of one of the seven wonders of the ancient world ended. With the increase of Christianity, it was first abandoned and secondly used as a quarry for the construction of new buildings over the centuries. It is said that the windows were also used for the apparition of Artemis to the devoted who believed in the goddess, an event that coincides with the day of the Epiphany. After many earthquakes and several destructions, almost nothing remains of the temple, but even today this building retains its charm and splendor intact. The Artemision is considered by many to be the most extraordinary wonder of the seven wonders of the ancient world, for its grandeur and great beauty.